Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man, or 2020's Invisible Man, is an amazing reboot. It has nothing to do with the H.G. Wells book or the James Whale movie, which is an amazing movie, and it's directed by James Whale, who's one of the greatest directors of the Universal Monsters. It takes all of that away and just uses the basic premise of, this man who is invisible, and makes it into just a tight, effective, smartly constructed genre kind of horror film. And it is great at that. Probably like the best of what Blumhouse sort of has to offer. This is directed by Leigh Whannell, who wrote like the Saw films and Insidious, and then turned to directing with Upgrade, which I didn't see but should, and this. And he's a very good genre director and a very good genre audience director, which we seem to be having quite a few of those nowadays, which is awesome. He wants the audience to have a good time and jump up and scream and like go and things like that. It's very much playing within that, which is great. I like kind of audience-friendly movies, and this very much is that, while still being a very tightly controlled, wonderful thriller. You can see some Hitchcock in there. You can see, obviously someone who loves horror, who loves Carpenter. I love how these directors almost like relish making horror films. Have you ever seen a production company like Blumhouse who loves making horror movies as much as they do, and they're like great at it, and Blumhouse excels doing these sort of things, and Invisible Man is another perfect addition to that legacy so far. But it does something else that I think is really interesting for a reboot. Because as much as you want to say that this has nothing to do with H.G. Wells' Invisible Man, and I will agree with that. Supposedly, he's not credited in the opening or the end. A lot of people have said that. I didn't check the credits. I don't remember that being there, but that's not something that would make a big impression anyway, so maybe it's not. I don't remember. I don't know. It could very well not be credited. However, it very much has to do with that book and the James Whale movie and its juxtaposition to that. Because regardless of if this has anything to do with that book or that movie, we know that Universal rebooted it because they wanted to use that name that they associate with it. As well as using the name Invisible Man conjures up, the book and the James Whale movie. But what this is doing is it's taking the original idea, just the idea of a man who is invisible. And anytime you think about it, like, dude, what would I do if I was invisible? And you'd be like, you do crazy things. You could steal money. No one could stop you from doing things because no one can see you. You could go into the women's locker room. You could do all these things. And that's what you would talk about. And that's like in most of film history, that is what you would do for an Invisible Man movie. And that was acceptable. And that's what people did. And then you have the Me Too movement and the Me Too era that we're living in right now. Now, regardless of how you feel about that, I will say that plays into this movie. In that sounds cool if you're an invisible man, right? If you're an invisible man, you can do whatever the fuck you want. It's amazing. But let's say you're not the Invisible Man. Let's say you are a victim of the Invisible Man, which is Elizabeth Moss's character, who used to be in a relationship with this guy, got out of it. She feels like he is watching him and she can't shake him. And how fucking horrifying is that? Now think of the idea of a man in the post-Me. Not that all men are evil. I'm not saying something weird like that. I'm saying the idea of a man becoming invisible under the context of what we know now and what we have been going through in the press for the past couple of years definitely has changed, correct? I think we can all agree with that. So when we look at The Invisible Man now, you can't make that movie anymore, guys. That's not gonna work. And this is the movie you almost had to make. And what Leigh Whannell did, which is very smart, is he went, I can't make that movie anymore. And also kind of, why would you want to make that movie? Because James Whale already did, and there's like, how are you going to get better than that? But that's like sort of nullifying my point. Saying like, you can't make that movie under the current context we are in. So let's take the context of The Invisible Man. If someone says The Invisible Man in 1933, they probably would have thought that was horrifying, but we just didn't listen to those people. But it's 2020, and we do listen to those people now. We should have before, but we do, especially at least hearing them a little bit more now. And we are listening to how horrifying that would be for its victims and taking the context from the Invisible Man himself to the victims. And it's a lot less fun if you're being preyed upon a guy who you can't see, especially if they're your ex-boyfriend. And the point being is that relationship was awful and terrible, and if you take someone who is abusive and emotionally abusive and physically abusive and probably some other stuff they just hint at abusive, that sounds horrifying. And they basically took the idea of the Invisible Man and twisted it and made it so much more interesting. And that is insanely smart, because it shows you what good genre films do, is they capture what is going on in the current climate, what is the current context, as well as doing a very entertaining, fun movie. So you can be entertained, you had a good time. I jumped, they threw paint on the Invisible Man, you're like, oh my god, he's invisible, stuff. That's fine, we get it. But it makes you also go, how horrifying would that be? It makes you think about people in abusive relationships. It makes you think about what women have to deal with in an abusive relationship, or with, being controlled by someone who will just like steamroll their entire career and life. It makes you kind of confront that, as well as being entertained. That's good genre films. That's why Get Out works so well. That's why Halloween works so well. That's how most of the horror films, which are all political, by the way, had to do with it, because they understood how to use that context to their advantage to make a really horrifying movie. And that's exactly what Invisible Man does, and it's really smart about it. I was hoping it would be this, to be honest with you, but it was more so because he both has fun with it. There's a lot of fun sequences where you show him showing off his directorial voice and all that stuff, and that's fine. But as well as like confronting a real thing, and what does that monster mean in this era? And it was scary in some places. It was just a very tightly constructed, well-made horror movie. And it's a movie that sometimes it was like, we have to get out of the house all night because you're crazy. You just stay here because Invisible Man is coming back. But we gotta go. There is a lot of convenient stuff like that, but it is a genre film. And if you have issues with that, maybe you should learn more about genre films and not say dumb things. But this is wonderful. It's what it's doing. It confronts a lot of issues. Elizabeth Moss is one of the greatest actors of her generation, absolutely, and does an amazingly good performance. This film is insanely paranoid and just showing walls and like areas and so forth where you think maybe the Invisible Man is. I'm curious, I would like to listen to the commentary and him to be like, the Invisible Man is actually not in that shot, but he is in this shot. So just because he's definitely fucking with her and playing with her. The logistics of how the Invisible Man gets to things, that would be a fascinating movie. I would love to see an Invisible Man movie like this, where he wears this suit, which is in the trailers, to be invisible, where he's like, oh, I gotta pee, but I'm sort of stalking her, and I can't use their bathroom because then they'll freak out, so I gotta go into the bushes, or how does he poop? I don't know. He doesn't have invisible poop because it's just a suit, so he's got to take care of that somewhere. And was he sleeping there? Did he? I guess he can't snore. So I can't be invisible because I snore. Does he park a couple blocks down, and people are like, why is this weird car here all the time? What's going on there? There's a lot of things about that. But I think that goes into another thing with this movie, is that it doesn't tell you very much. You hear he's a billionaire with optics, and I guess optics would be being invisible. You can get away with a lot of stuff. So, he's an expert. You understand, he's a tech wizard person. That's all you really need to know. But it's very smart about the information it gives you. It almost gives you the only information you need. There's a very economically made opening sequence where, remember, there's a part where she's trying to get out, she's trying to sneak out. This is a review of the movie, so it's a bit of a spoiler, but maybe don't watch this part because it was a really good opening sequence. But she accidentally bumps into the dog's food bowl, and it kicks. And at that point, you just know she steps on something, and you see the name of the dog on the food bowl. And then immediately there is a dog in this house, which we have not seen. So that gives you a piece of information, as well as it heightens your paranoia. And I thought that was there's so many parts in this where something will drop, or something will move, or something like that, and it's going to come in later, and I could tell you 100% it was going to come up later when I was watching it, and it's really predictably so. But I sort of love the mechanics of that. I sort of love the idea of oh, she dropped this thing. Well, it's definitely coming back later. When movies set themselves up so perfectly, because it kind of rewards the audience, but it kind of gets you into it because you're sort of waiting to when it's going to come back. In terms of horror, I think one of the elements of horror, and if you've seen me review a horror movie before, you've definitely heard me say this before, but the whole idea of horror predominantly, for the most part, is not knowing things. And there's a whole bunch you don't know. You don't really know about the relationship. You don't even know what the Invisible Man guy looks like until the end of the movie. And you don't, spoilers, I guess, but that's how Invisible Man movies work, so, It's just smart about the information it gives you. It only gives you the little pieces you need to know, and it gets you so wrapped up in it, but it makes you kind of question a lot of things because you don't know everything. So when you don't know everything, you're almost questioning the information you do know and questioning what you don't know, and that it kind of opens you up to kind of just go into this experience and be surprised by certain things and wonder and question things, which makes this such a great, fun and emotional kind of movie experience. I really liked Invisible Man. I like what Lee Winnell did with this. I definitely am going to see Upgrade now, and I just loved this kind of a genre film. Part of me wants to go, it's not like the most perfect horror movie in the world or something, but another part of me goes, yeah, but I had such a good time, and it did exactly kind of what I wanted it to do. It was kind of that great kind of genre film. It was that kind of cheap beer, and I was satisfiably drunk on a Friday night, and shouldn't I be happy with that? I am happy with that. I am happy with this movie. But I think it was trying to be a bit more, but it kind of tricks you into thinking it's cheap beer. And it's able to trick you while being it at the same time, which I think a lot of horror films, can't do as well as this can, and was pretty excellent at it, with great performances from Elizabeth Moss, Aldous Hodge, to Storm Reed. Just an excellently crafted kind of horror film, and the kind of things that makes me happy to go see Blumhouse stuff. I think this was just a really wonderful way to bring back The Invisible Man and to rethink this concept for the modern era. It's not necessarily, I think, when people think, oh, does it betray it or honor it or something, it's not even about that. It's taking that concept and making it work for the modern era organically in such a way. This is probably one of the smartest reboots because it did so in a contextual way, and did so in a way that I both almost wish it wasn't even named that, but I also think that's almost the most appropriate way, because it makes you think about, why did we call him that before? Why did we take that perspective before? And why are we taking this perspective now? It makes you question all those things, but also jumping up in your seat because that guy's in an invisible suit and he could do something at any time, and having those combinations going on at once shows a really smart and interesting genre filmmaker, and making this a really smart and interesting genre film, and why I love genre so much, because it can tackle so many things at the same time while also leaving you happily entertained. So if you have seen The Invisible Man and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to.